had the opportunity to go see Ike and Baton, and man, let me tell you, that was extremely fulfilling. They tell me they got something out of it too, because of course I asked that question along with my executive assistant David Hyatt, the Command Master Chief, Senior Chief David Hyatt, that is. And we've got really good feedback, but I was so fulfilled and satisfied in the meeting. So the way that works is I'll go in, I'll meet with the XO and the CO and the CMC before going out and talking to the crew. I think that portion is important because I want to give them the opportunity to let me know what they're talking about, so I can kind of add volume and magnify those things. So sitting down talking to the Ike, CO, and XO, again, super fulfilling, very rewarding. Focus went to Russia and to China, and his perspective on China and their impact to the global market, their impact to Navy Africa was very interesting. In fact, in talking to senior leaders, it often becomes, well, have you read this book, or have you seen this movie, have you read this article? And he recommended to me a book I hadn't even heard of. I was kind of embarrassed, called The 100-Year Marathon, which is a perspective on China and their preparation to this very strategic moves that they've made around the world. So again, great conversation with them. But my measure of full measure of satisfaction and fulfillment came in talking to the Enlisted Leader Development Course graduates. So the intermediate level leadership development course is part of laying the keel. Now there's various different courses. The foundational course, the intermediate course, we already have on the street being taught by folks across the Navy. The Ike had over 300 graduates of their leadership development course last year, which is extremely exciting. And they anticipate having 700 graduate this year as they made their way out of the shipyards, and now they're getting underway. So they're preparing to get underway. They've got crew cert, flight deck cert, in-serve, and all these other requirements coming up, but they still took the time to allow me to come aboard, have conversations with the most senior people at the command, and discover something that I just did not know, and that is how active laying the keel was on board that ship. So super proud of them, as well as Senior Chief Burke, who is the leader, or taking the lead on that particular leadership and development courses. Very exciting to get a chance to spend some time with them. The young sailors, so the E5, the intermediate level leadership development course is for E5s that will very soon be eligible for first class petty officer, and they were extremely well versed at character development, resources that are at their fingertips, and the value of the synergy that comes from that particular small group from various different parts of the command. So you've been on carriers, you've seen how that thing operates.
Right.
As an MC, almost like the CMC, you have access to the whole ship. But
More
a
or less,
person
yeah.
in reactor may never talk to someone in air, even though they're the ones that are providing electricity and steam to the flight deck so we can launch recover aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
But professionally, they may not interact. The ILDC allows them to interact and get their perspective on leadership. So really, really neat. And then to go to Baton, same thing with Baton, their XO and their CO. Very curious about what we're seeing with regard to China on the continent of Africa, and what's going on with Russia from the Black Sea to the high north. They were particularly concerned or asking about Africa, because when you look at what we have done with the large class gators, right? So WASP, San Antonio, Iwo Jima, when they were here, just to name a few. Kearsarge, by the way, who just made their way through the AOR and are still near. They were asking about, what type of support that we're doing with regard to Northern Africa, with regard to violent extremists and some of the other things that are going on there. So really, really fulfilling visit with those folks. We the first phase of the leadership mess was for the Fleet Master Chiefs, and then CNIC, Naval Reactors, and Naval Reserves. So those three came in. They briefed us on kind of the current state of affairs. The CNIC across the Navy we have had and heard across the Department of Defense. We have heard about issues with housing. The PPV housing, some housing was not being taken care of as well as others. And so in a very concentrated way, CNIC has applied, again, that's Commander Naval Installations Command, has applied some focused intensity on getting that right, or getting feedback so we can get it right. So that has been going well, so I gave us an update on that. Also talked about unaccompanied housing or barracks, as well as CDC. The Child Development Center across our services has got some pretty serious challenges. Across the nation, there is a shortage of child care providers. So regrettably, we feel some of the pain from across our nation, especially because we have bases like San Diego, Norfolk, Hawaii, that are in not just expensive areas to live in, but they also live there. We saturate them, with our service members, and so the Navy takes up a big portion of the bill. And so, again, an update on that. One, teaser, I guess I could say on the radio, without being apologetic about it, because they told me I'm responsible for what I know, and I share as much as I can. And I wasn't told it was G14 classified, therefore I will share that we're seeking ways to innovative ways to partner, with organizations who have child care facilities already. And so if there is anyone out there who might have an idea how we can, not transition to PPV, of course, but just to create an environment where our sailors aren't, and our Department of Defense shipmates are not burdened with carrying too much of a financial load. And for example, in San Diego, there's some folks in San Diego who have child care providers in Temecula, but they actually work, down at 32nd Street or North Island, and that's a 45-minute difference, between those two places. That's almost unreasonable. But we're in a situation now across our nation where we just do, what's appropriate. Make those sacrifices for the family. That's just what we do. Naval Reserves, here in our theater, we're super familiar with the reserves because we just cannot operate. Sixth Fleet does over 70 exercises a year. There's just no chance we can do all those exercises just with our staff alone. So they talked about augmenting a ready force. They talked about how the Naval Reserves is restructuring, so we can better use talent and use it faster, and even perhaps have various different reserve groups that deploy together rather than just individual augmentees. Really, really fascinating and logical, changes to that force. But as I said, we're in this theater, Navy Europe, Navy Africa, super duper familiar. The preponderance of our sailors that are in Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, are reserve forces. When we do an exercise, as happens very frequently, did a big exercise, Trident Juncture. We're working our way towards ball tops this year, which we will support fully. There will be reserves here coming, not to do, just nonsensical work, but to do, the real live watch standing for real world events. And so we have a relevant and exciting relationship with the reserves here. So he gave that brief to the entire team, and then we went on to naval reactors. Now, the interesting thing about naval reactors, it's a pretty small community. When you think about submarines and you think nukes and you think about carrier nukes, there's not really a big force. But what is extremely important to that force to operate at a high level is to have strong cultures of integrity and character. And so naval reactors came and they shared how they are making their way through increasing integrity and character within those watch standards and within those nuclear trained sailors, and sharing that across our Navy. So that was extremely fulfilling, but it's kind of a big deal, and sometimes when I go to a weight room, if there's 150-pound dumbbells in that weight room, that tells me something about the weight room, the weights, 100-pound plates and 45-pound plates and so forth. when you go to a symposium or you go to a conference, you can tell how big a deal it is by who comes to speak. So this year, as with every one of these leadership symposiums, the Secretary of the Navy came and he spoke to us. The CNO came and spoke. By the way, the Vice Chief came, Vice Chief of Naval Operations came and spoke. Oh, by the way, the Chief of Navy Personnel, he came and spoke. And oh, by the way, the Admiral in charge of Sailor 2025, 21st Century Sailor, came and spoke to us as well. And so, on the strength of those speakers, you should know that there was a very, very solid information that was provided, and there are fantastic takeaways. And so my team is putting together our notes, and we'll make them public to the leadership here, so they know the topics that we talk about. And the intention, much the same as it is with the leadership mess, is to stimulate conversation, that generates feedback, so that we can become smarter, more agile, mobile, and hostile. It's funny to me, some of my peers say, let's do an all-hands call. I don't want one question about beards, and I want one question about uniforms. And I like those questions because they're easy to, I don't want to say dismiss, but they're easy to address because we have instructions, we have guidance. So in the recent NAVADMIN, you're right, there's a couple of changes that are I think to be interesting. But with regard to women, there's a female CPO and officer slacks and skirts, and we're doing some testing and evaluation on a new fit. I think that when I look back to when I joined the Navy, 1986, we were wearing these bell-bottom trousers and chambray color shirts, which were shockingly popular in the 70s. And I thought that was okay. I didn't, to me, wearing a uniform is not about a fashion statement. Is it functional? Can I do the maintenance that I need to do in it? Can I run and fight a fire in it, and so forth? And our working uniform, though, that uniform that we can wear out in town, I agree that uniform should be reasonably fashionable. And so the old school type of slacks with no pockets, for example, for a woman, I think we're beyond that day. So these changes make sense, and they're not like bell-bottom skirts either. So if let me just leave it there. It's not shaped like a bell.
Right.
So
okay.
They shall not be fitted. You know what I mean? They shouldn't have Mercedes in the belt line or anything like the tight-fitting dresses. But they should be something that are reasonably fashionable for this particular era. So what you may not know is that I didn't miracle my way into being the Fleet Master Chief. I had to, kind of work my way through a couple of personal, challenges that I was able to overcome. But those challenges for me earlier in my career meant that I had gone to the Captain's Non-Judicial Punishment, right, NJP or Captain's Mass. Other services might call it office hours or Article 15. For the Navy, our policy formerly was 12 years in a row of good service earned you the rank to wear gold stripes. And now what we have done with this particular service stripes, that is, what we have done now with this NAVADMIN is created an environment where if you do 12 years, everyone wears gold after that. And that's reasonable. And just personally speaking, from my perspective, I think there's good value. A comment was made to me when I was a chief, when I first made chief, by a first class that didn't make chief. Both of us, I had 14 years in when I made it, and we were both around the same amount of time served. We were in our dress uniforms, and this was maybe within a month or so of me making it. And he said, and we're both up for it, I made it, he did. And he says to me, "Oh wow, Chief, you still got red stripes, huh?" And I was like, "Well, I'd rather be a chief with red stripes than first class with gold." Just saying. Yeah. And I ended up repeating that statement as a senior chief to, a chief later on. There was a measure to me, not that wearing red stripes is a scarlet letter, but it shows that you're able to overcome a challenge. And we as sailors, I think it is important, we as adults, I think it is important that we are resilient and that we are strong and that we are tough and able to overcome. And That's just my perspective. So we've had a change. It's certainly good to that change is good for the Navy because it's for the individual because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Looking for red stripes and red rating badges. I had 5 red stripes and a senior chief badge that was red. I had to order that online. So that does make sense. There has not been, or I should say, there is some small amplification of the wear of ponytails and hair and things like that. So I encourage everyone to look up that NAVADMIN. By the way, it's 075/19. Again, NAVADMIN 075/19. And take a look at the Uniform Initiative update. It's beneficial to everybody.